delivering a secure border, which was the original mandate for general election. Gosh, however many prime ministers ago that was. The provisions at the moment only encourage migration. It only supports the illegal trade in human beings. Is Rwanda an answer to it? No, I would agree with you on that. I don't think it is. Your reflection earlier that 29,000 people drowned, I've no reason to dispute the number, but of course all bar a double handful of those drowned in the Mediterranean, yes, not in the English Channel. That's not to say it's acceptable. It's not acceptable anywhere. But these were individuals trying to reach Europe, not the UK specifically, although I accept the UK would have been the intended destination for many.
Do you think our approach to immigration, to illegal immigration, is not tough enough, Lucy, or do you think it's time to rethink and perhaps be a bit more compassionate in the hope of finding a way to deal with this problem that actually works?
There's a framework of international law that was agreed against a background of movement decades old, and is no longer really suitable for the ease and the freedom of global movement that we have now. Nonetheless, we have obligations under those treaties. We have obligations as ethical human beings, and we elect our parliamentarians to reach those decisions. Constantly demonising the situation, I recognise the previous calls used the word politicisation. I think I might go further and say that we risk demonising these individuals. For whatever reason they are seeking refuge in this country, our systems allow them to do that and arguably encourage them to do that, and we can't fault any individual for seeking to better their lives. What we can fault and must are the criminal gangs who profit from this and who are bringing individuals in, not just to seek asylum, but to field the grey economy, bringing people in as victims of human trafficking, for prostitution, for illegal working. It's that criminality that we need to target, not the migration.
Lucy, thank you. Lucy Morton there, spokesperson for the ISU, which represents Borders, Immigration and Customs staff. Thank you for your time this afternoon, Lucy. Over to you. I wonder what you make of those different perspectives. Is a tougher, hardline approach on immigration what we need to get a grip on something that I think we can all agree is a problem? Or do we need to step back, tear up what we're doing and have a rethink? And if so, how? 0345 6060 973. Your call's coming up. Time first, though, for the news headlines at 5:17. Lottie Morley.
The Shadow Culture Secretary has told LBC LGBT football fans heading to the World Cup in Qatar shouldn't have to hide who they are. Downing Street says Rishi Sunak has reinstated a ban on fracking for oil and gas in England. And Sir Keir Starmer says the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has done a grubby deal by reappointing Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. LBC weather, dry for most tonight, some showers in the northwest and a low of 9 degrees.
LBC travel, I'm Joanne Webb. 2 lanes are closed on the M25 clockwise between junctions 24 at Potters Bar and 25 at the A10. It's because a tanker has broken down and there are delays all the way back to junction 22 at London Coley. Also on the M25 there are anti-clockwise queues from junction 3 at the M20 to the Dartford Tunnel, and that's because a lorry broke down earlier, although that's now being recovered. Long delays in Beckton with the A13 being closed for a number of hours earlier. It's all open now at the North Circular Road, but those westbound delays go all the way back to Dagenham, and it's still very busy on all the surrounding routes. And also long delays continue in Wandsworth with the A3 West Hill staying closed southbound for the emergency repair works.
This is LBC. EE full fiber broadband can connect 100 devices around your home, like laptops, smartphones, smart TVs, smart fridges, even smart kettles. You can connect them all. Pretty impressive, huh? This is EE full fiber broadband, powered by BT.
Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk.
Call Ben Kentish 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
The UK's first human heart transplant has been completed, supported by the British groundbreaking research that could help save millions of lives. Search VHF Wills.
Hello there, it's the Hairy Bikers here, and we are here to help you. Yes, you listeners, to get more from your food.
We are indeed more character, more delight, and more flavour.
Yeah, and we know a proper tasty way to do it, with more, of course, the nation's favourite stock.
That's right, so whether it's a chicken, or chickpea comfort and curry,
Or a heart of beef or bean chili for dinner tonight.
just be sure you give it more with
To verify, call 0800 731 1411.
With her new iPhone 14 Pro, Izzy can now see every tiny feather on the robin hiding in that holly bush. Amazing! See the world at its most beautiful with the incredible new iPhone 14 Pro. Get it from Vodafone today with the UK's only phone buyback guarantee. And get a guaranteed buyback price when you trade it in.
Selected devices only. Trading in good condition from September to October 2023 via our trading tool. Airtime and device eligibility checks and terms apply. See vodafone.co.uk/buyback. Credit by Vodafone.
Hey Harry, hello mate. I'm at the races this weekend. Any tips?
You got to look smart, so wear a tie. I use the rabbit and fox method.
What's that?
So the rabbit hops over the log, that's the fin side of the tie. Then he crawls under and around the log, because he's trying to outsmart the fox, you see. Then he dives into his hole. No, wait, so he's here, or is he over there? Then the fox is here, happy carnage. Actually, your best bet is to head over to Bet Victor, but there's no need for all this time malarkey.
Listen to him and make your best bet on the racing at BetVictor. 18 plus, be careful.
At TDC Implant Centres, we can give you full mouth dental implants in just one day.
I could feel my teeth were loosening, they didn't feel as secure.
We gave Tony dental implants in natural-looking fixed teeth.
I walked in at 9:30 with problems, and I walked out at 5:30 with a full set of teeth.
Around 3 months later, we exchanged his fixed teeth for his final permanent set.
What drew me to this was the fact that it could be done in a day. To discover that that was possible was a revelation.
Book your consultation. Visit smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Holly Street on 0203 7334 986.
On LBC.
The government of the UK needs to take a new approach to migration. Let's get straight to your calls. Bev in Waltham Abbey. Bev, hi.
Hi Ben, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Oh, crikey. We've had a lot going on, haven't we?
We have.
Thanks so much for your question. So I'm a health professional. I won't say what I do, but it's great that us British people want to help. That's great. We've got that giving nature. However, I think lots of people voted for Brexit for a reason. It have a control over the borders. So I think the last caller was right with regards to we can't demonise individuals. However, the Foreign Office have to work with the countries that these people are coming from to build an infrastructure there so they can prosper and have economical prosperity. Because I understand that's probably why they're coming here, for better prospects. Being a health professional, I'm spending 4 or 5 patients a day in the morning and in the afternoon with interpreting services, and they're coming with chronic problems. It's great that we help them. However, it does take a lot of our time because we're spending an hour with some of these people because they're coming with a lot of issues, a lot of mental health issues as well because of the trauma of leaving their family behind. So you can't just say that we've got to stop the borders. We have to build an infrastructure from the countries that they're coming from. Now, if it's war-torn countries or refugees, that's why they have to work with the countries that they're coming from, the nearby countries, whether it's Jordan or whatever have you, to build this infrastructure. And they have to, it's silly them going all the way halfway across the world, right, to us, when they can actually work with the neighbouring countries.
Bev, I think you make a fair point in the long term about trying to avoid the reasons and remove the reasons why people feel the need to flee places like Syria or Somalia is a long-term solution, though, isn't it? It's going to take years, it's going to take decades. There's no easy answers. What's the short-term and the medium-term policy? What should it be? Thank you for your call. Billy in Colchester next. Billy.
Hello, Ben. Well, as alluded to by the Lib Dem MP you had on, and also, I believe, supported by quite a few Tory MPs, the connection needs to be made between all these mainly young men idling hotels at taxpayers' expense, and our chronic labour shortage, particularly like on farms, yeah?
Yep.
So
not just farms, construction, care work, farming, you're right. So would you like to see them, even if they've entered illegally, given the right to work to fill some of those gaps and those jobs that need doing, Billy?
Well, yeah, but I think what could be done would be to say to them, well, you know, there's got to be a work ethic, provided you can work in whatever job you like, obviously being paid for it, for say 2 years, you'll be watched for those 2 years, and provided your work ethic is good, then you will be considered for asylum and so on. But now, the argument against that always is, well, it'll encourage more people to come, yeah? But now, my idea is, I mean, the threat of being sent to Rwanda hasn't discouraged them, and I would think somehow people like travelling overland from places like Afghanistan or Africa, they actually have no clue about what is happening in the UK. They're told by these people smugglers how everything in the UK is great, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think there is anything that will discourage them, yeah?
Well, I think if they're desperate enough to try and come here on small boats, Billy, then yes, there is not a lot that is going to discourage them. These people are desperate. That's why they are risking their lives day in, day out, trying to come. I sympathise with your point about if we're having people here unable to work at the same time as having work that needs doing, it makes sense. My worry is if you say to those people, okay, well, you've come here illegally, you don't qualify for asylum status, but we're going to let you stay and work, then that incentivises more and more people to come here illegally without having applied for visas. But I think the idea that we have big gaps in our economy where jobs need filling, and we have people coming here wanting to work, but we're not letting them work, seems to me a very, very strange state of affairs. I think you're right to point that out. Billy, thank you. Billy and Colchester there. More on this in just a moment. First, though, 5:26 the time. Let's get a business news update with Chris Justin from 7 Investment Management. Chris, very good afternoon to you. Barclays in the news today. Big profits for the bank.
That's right. Good afternoon, Ben. They enjoyed a bumper quarter, and that's even really understating things because profits were made of nearly £2 billion in the last 3 months. That's a 6% rise and nearly £200 million more than forecast as well. So a pleasant surprise for investors. Context, a big reason for that rise is interest rates going up. So if you were to boil a bank down into its simplest form, what it does is pay interest to people depositing money with it, and it charges interest to those who borrow. And the difference between the two is called the net interest margin. So as rates increase, so does that margin. And that's bluntly, by the way, because lenders don't pass on rate increases in full. It won't shock people that would see what the base rate is at the moment and what they can actually earn from their bank account. But nevertheless, when you see a bank making that amount of money, you start to realise just, I guess, how loaded the deck is in the favour of those corporations. And it's actually that boost that has brought the conversations about windfall taxes back to the fore again. As Barclays, the second bank to demonstrate the tailwind that rate rises are provided this week. HSBC also beat forecasts, so you can expect to hear more on that topic, I think, as the new Chancellor and Prime Minister grapple with balancing the books in the weeks to come. I think it's November, isn't it, that they've got their
November the 17th, yes, you are right, Chris. Less good news elsewhere for Made.com, the furniture website.
That's right, and I think this just shows how different companies fare and how sectors are impacted by what's going on in the current climate, because you've got one that's benefiting from the fact that rates have been rising, you've got another that's really struggling. So Made.com, it's an online furniture business for those who are unaware, and it's stopped taking new orders, and that's more significant than it sounds. If you now go on the website, it says sit tight, we'll be back soon, and that's because the company's shares, and get this, Ben, they fell by 93% in trading yesterday. It's just half a p per share. I know, all rather bleak. And that's after the business confirmed that it had not been able to find a buyer. It's been up against it recently. The company had warned actually potential suitors that's looking for further investment to make sure that it could continue going as a going concern, I should say. And then it would need about £70 million to continue just as a standalone business. Unfortunately, that's too rich for the blood of those previously interested parties. So this step today is essentially about preserving capital for creditors. I think what makes this story such a tough read is that the company only went public, they only floated their shares last year in June, and that was valued back then at £775 million. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the sectors that have been impacted, retail in particular, we've also had supply chain disruption, consumers then squeezed by current inflationary pressures are spending less money on discretionary big ticket items. That's what Made.com essentially offers. It's a very tough climate indeed to operate in. So a lot of uncertainty, I'm afraid, for Made's investors and any stakeholders that are involved with the business.
Chris, thank you. Chris Johnson there from Seven Investment Management. Still to come this afternoon.
We must recapture billions of tons of carbon. We must fix our sights on keeping 1.5 degrees within reach.
A new UN report says countries' climate plans are nowhere near the 1.5 degree goal set out at COP26. That comes as scientists tell us climate change is also damaging our health. We'll hear from one of them in just a moment. First, the time now, 5:30. Let's get the latest news headlines with Lottie Morley.
Labour says LGBT football fans should be free to be themselves at the World Cup in Qatar, a country where homosexuality is illegal. It's after the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly was criticised for telling LBC people needed to be respectful if they're attending. Campaigners have welcomed Rishi Sunak's decision to reimpose the ban on fracking in England. His predecessor Liz Truss lifted the moratorium, arguing it would strengthen the country's energy supplies. And Mr Sunak has been accused of doing a grubby deal to keep his party united. The Prime Minister's defended his decision to reappoint Suella Braverman as Home Secretary just days after she resigned over a security breach. LBC weather, dry for most this evening, some showers in the northwest and a low of 9 degrees.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, if England got to the World Cup final in Qatar, would you go?
No, the human rights record is such that I wouldn't go, and that'll be the position of the Labour Party.
James Cleverly, Foreign Secretary. Sir Keir Starmer told me earlier this week he won't be going. Are you?
Well, it is an important international event. I think if I am able to go, I should go.
But do you not send more of a message in the way Sir Keir has said that he will not go, even if England get to the World Cup final?
Well, as leader of the opposition, he's in a lovely position to send messages. I've got real work to do.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Motorway, where dealers compete to give you their best price for your car.
LBC.
Supported by the British Armed
data, EU roaming included, and no annual price rises. All for just £5 a month. Lebara. More for less. Change or cancel anytime. Rated excellent on Trustpilot. Buy now at lebara.co.uk. Terms apply.
Hello there, it's the Hairy Bikers here, and we are here to help you. Yes, you listeners, to get more from your food.
We are indeed more character, more delight, and more flavour.
Yeah, and we know a proper tasty way to do it. With Knorr, of course, the nation's favourite stock.
That's right, so whether it's a chicken or chickpea comforting curry,
or a hearty beef or bean chili for dinner tonight,
just be sure you give it more with Knorr.
To verify, 0800 731 1411.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Ben Kentish.
5:35 is the time. Rosa's text. We must address the causes of immigration, including climate change and our interference in other countries' affairs. These are only going to get worse as the world starts to starve. It needs a massive international effort to help people living in unbelievable poverty rather than demonising those who are trying to get a better life. Mark in Glasgow says Rwanda and similar schemes will never work in terms of deterring people smugglers. A smuggler in Turkey or Libya isn't going to give people proper information about our asylum system. If the person doesn't know, then the smuggler will lie. They will take the cash at the start of the journey, not once the person is in the UK. The best deterrent, Mark says, is being direct competition to the people smugglers by setting up safe routes or hubs. That's Mark in Glasgow calling for a new approach, I think is needed, to our policy, our system on immigration and asylum. Another text here says we need to focus more on the reasons that people are fleeing their countries, things like climate change, which is only going to get worse. On that, let's get an update on two new reports out today about exactly that. Global health at the mercy of a fossil fuel addiction, says one, while another warns that the current pledges from countries on reducing greenhouse gas emissions are nowhere near enough. Professor Elizabeth Robinson is a Grantham from the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the London School of Economics. Professor, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
These can become stronger. Watch as the
But the only reason I used to go was just for the girls. I was just to pick up girls. That was the only reason. I wasn't very good.
Do you know that?
Rollerblading, that was.
See, that was me ice skating at the discos just to meet boys. That's the only reason I went on a Monday night with my mates. But it's great to have that as a youngster, though, isn't it? It's sort of harmless, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, it was a safe area for people to have a chat and a bit of a laugh and meet other people and that. Yeah, it was really good. When I heard about it the other day, it's like, blimey, is that place still going? I didn't even think it was still going even after all this time. So yeah. It is good that it's going, but there we go.
Well, it's still going. It's not gone. I mean, they're in negotiations, so hopefully it will stay. And as I was saying earlier, it's so important for people of about that age that you were, Martin, and I was when I went skating, to have somewhere to go. So have somewhere to go, safe, also get rid of a bit of energy and you know, pull the boys and girls. That's what you want.
Yeah, great.
Well, good call, Martin. A pleasure to speak to you. Have a great evening.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks very much indeed. Stephen's in Hockley talking about Thunderbirds. Hello, Thunderbirds. I'll go, Stephen.
Yeah, they certainly are, Sadie, aren't they? I was about 5 when it first came out, and I loved it. And then, of course, Captain Scarlet and the Mystery came out after that. I loved that.
That was terrifying, wasn't it? It was terrifying.
Well, yeah, there was one where they were attacking Cloudbray, so I had to get behind the sofa. My mum still reminds me about it. But you see, the trouble was I never grew out of it. So I was we got married, my wife and I, and I suppose I was about 35 or something. We went to Blackpool for the day, and I dragged that. There was an exhibition on at the Winter Gardens. All the models were there. Somebody earlier mentioned the Fab One, Lady Penelope's car. They had it wasn't a full size replica, but I think it was the one they used in the programme. It was all there. I dragged around that all day. She got a bit fed up with that. We lived up in West Yorkshire, and we weren't far from the Sooty Museum either, and in Guiseley, and I dragged her around that as well, and she got a bit fed up with it. Harry Corbett, the Sooty guy, he came from there. Funnily enough, he was a cousin of the fish and chip guy, Harry Ramsden.
Really?
They were related. They came from the same place in West Yorkshire. But what really got her was she was the team leader at this office. We didn't work in the same place. She worked somewhere else. And back in the day, in the late 90s, you had a landline telephone, so you'd ring up and you'd leave an answer phone message, and it was one of these old style answer phones, which the whole office could hear. And of course, when she didn't answer, I used to tell her that I was the Mr. Ons. I can do it for you if you'd like.
I'd love it. Come on.
Right, I haven't done this for a while. This is the voice of the Mr. Ons. We know that you can hear us. Rebounded all around the office. Her team loved it. They wanted to keep on playing it.
That is brilliant. Stephen, thank you very much indeed. The voice of the Mr. Ons. Where else would you get that? You wouldn't get that anywhere else, would you? You're not going to get that on Radio 1 or Radio 2, are you? Voice of the Mr. Ons. Stephen, that was absolutely brilliant. Oh, frighten the life out of me. I'm going to get out from under the desk now. Talking heads once in a lifetime. That's what that was.
I don't how do you say it? I'm going to sort of break it up into syllables.
Okay.
A3N.
A3N. It's not that hard, really, is it?
It's not really when you break it up, but I've lived with it all my life, and
well, look, it's a beautiful name. I'm sorry it's driven you up the wall, but I think it's a gorgeous name, Adrian.
Well, I like your name as well.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Call me again. I hope you feel better as well. And thanks for getting in touch, because I'm sure there'll be others tuning into the show that they're feeling like you. But you know what? At least you haven't changed it, and nor should you have to. It's a beautiful name, Adrienne.
Well, thank you very much.
You take care. Take care. Speak to you soon for sure. Bye. What a lovely call. Although I feel for her. She said, Shay, it's driven me up the wall. It's driven her mad. She says, bless her. Right, let's go to Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hi there. Am I right in thinking it's shaken front or shaken back?
I can't hear you. Say that again. Hold on, Ian. We're going to call you back because I really want to hear what you have to say, and I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear you there. So we're going to try and call Ian back. Actually, what we'll do, we'll head to a track. We'll get Ian back, and then we'll come and we'll have a chat with him. But if you want to have a chat, 0800 731 2000. You can always drop me a text as well. 81333. Start the message with London. And if you're on WhatsApp, it's 08000 321 333. Start the message with London.
go over there ahead of time to have a look. Is that right?
That's right, and I'm not going to Qatar because we gave Qatar the opportunity to hear what our concerns were. They made a big series of promises about making it a World Cup for everybody. They've reneged on every single one of those promises, and it's just not acceptable for the World Cup to be in a place that doesn't respect human rights and is flagrantly disrespectful.
What do you mean when you say they've reneged on everything? If you went with, say, your boyfriend, would you be allowed to share a double bed in a hotel?
If I went with my husband, it's very clear that I would be welcome in some hotels and certainly not welcome in other hotels. A German survey of hotels found that over a third would prevent a same-sex couple from sharing a bed.
And if you, I suppose, what does compromise or what does be respectful mean when talking of how LGBT people might behave visiting Qatar? Does that mean sort of nothing in public, but don't worry about what you do in private? Which is, I guess, how I would interpret that.
I guess that's technically correct, Evan, but that doesn't stop me thinking about the Qatari people who happen to be LGBT+, who go to jail, who go through the torture of conversion therapy or get forced into exile. And in all conscience, how could I go to a World Cup knowing that this is held by a regime that does that to LGBT+ people?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because more attention has been placed on Qatar's policy to LGBT+ people as a result of the World Cup than had ever been placed on it before.
Indeed. I mean, it's one of nearly 70 countries around the world that criminalises same-sex behaviour and trans identity, etc. And we want to make sure that actually human rights are more globally respected. And yes, the World Cup is an opportunity to shine a light on places that don't respect this.
Yeah.
But actually, the World Cup should be done in a way that being respectful of human rights is an essential criteria of potentially being awarded the World Cup.
Yeah, that decision was taken by FIFA some years ago. I am just going to say, Paul, Qatar say public displays of affection is frowned upon. It's not part of our culture. That goes across the board to everybody. There's a lot of training going into security personnel to make sure things that are culturally different are seen in that frame, and that everybody is welcome, any gender, sexual orientation, religion, race. Rest assured, they'll all be welcome here. Paul Amman, thank you. Thanks for your reflections on that. 10 to 6, we'll have a last quick recap of the headlines. Here's Tina.
Rishi Sunak has promised to look after the UK's most vulnerable people at his first Prime Minister's questions. But he clashed with Sir Keir Starmer over his decision to reappoint Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, a decision the Labour leader described as being the result of a grubby deal. The publication of the government's much-anticipated statement on tax and spending has been delayed by more than 2 weeks. And the online furniture retailer Made.com has stopped taking new orders after talks to find a buyer failed, raising fears about the future of the company.
Thank you, Tina. Now, there probably isn't going to be an imminent general election. You can never rule these things out, but the Conservatives don't look keen on having one right now, what with being 20 or 30% behind in the polls. However, the political parties are getting ready for an election whenever it comes, and the most important thing is to have candidates in place. That process is underway in constituencies up and down the land, and the man who has chosen to make these selections his own specialist subject is the political journalist Michael Crick, who joins us now to tell us how it is going. Michael, thank you for giving us your time on PM this afternoon. First of all, are the parties rushing to get this done, with the potential for political instability making them a bit wary about the potential for an election?
Well, the Conservatives are being very slow about it, partly because they don't have, really realistically at the moment, the Conservatives don't have any target seats they hope to gain from other parties, and so there's not much to do for the Conservatives, and they're basically delaying nearly all their selections until the boundaries are settled, which may not be, the new boundaries are being proposed, which may not be till next summer. Labour, however, are being pretty active about this and are announcing every week a new batch of seats that they're starting selections in, and people have a week to apply and so on. And Labour have already selected 36 candidates over the summer and this autumn, And a pattern is now starting to emerge of the kind of people they are. I mean, after all, Keir Starmer needs, roughly 140, 150 new seats to gain in order to get a comfortable working majority. So he needs 150 candidates. And one of the problems that Labour has, and I think a lot of people at the top of the party acknowledge this, is the rather low calibre of the people who are currently Labour MPs, and concerns that are there enough people, and will there be enough people of sufficient calibre to be ministers in a Labour government?
Oh, is that right? So look, is there basically a central party, an HQ push, I don't know, to weed out the left? You'd be looking for
definitely
right, and to make sure that their folks are getting nominated in the winnable seat.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, of the 36 I mentioned, there's only one candidate, Faiza Sashin in Chingford and Woodford Green, who stood at the last election. She's an economist, who you could say is on the left. Loads of other people, quite a lot of other people, probably half a dozen, a dozen maybe, have been weeded out by the party high command when they draw up the long lists. They've been going through social media postings going back years, and they've been utterly ruthless about it, frankly. I mean, only the other day, Emma Denko, who was the MP, Labour MP for Kensington between 2017 and 2019, before she lost a seat, made her name really over her response to the awful Grenfell Tower fire, of course. She was not allowed on the long list because she was hoping to become the MP again. And that sort of thing is going on behind the scenes. But the leader's office, they have to be very careful about this, because what they basically do is in each example, they identify somebody that they'd rather like, but they can't let it be known that that is their man or woman. And so they have to sort of operate behind the scenes carefully, giving this person a little bit of help here and there. And sometimes they go as far as excluding somebody who might be a rival to their chosen man. I mean, it goes on all the time. It's always gone on like this. I mean, there's so much intrigue in this process, which is why I find it so fascinating.
And Michael,
and similar things going on in the other parties as well, particularly the Tories.
You are all over it, Michael, and we'll stay in touch with you through the next year and a half, if that's how long it takes, as candidates are selected. Suella Braverman has been in the news today. Back in the role as Home Secretary, which she was ejected from. Before she went last week, she had actually just launched into quite a tirade in a common speech, railing against, quote, the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Coalition of Chaos, the Guardian reading, tofu-eating wokerati. How did tofu become such a contentious piece of the culture war? Why pick on the coagulated soy milk? Now, last week, we had in fact prepared an item on tofu in the wake of Suella Braverman's attack on it, but it got pushed out of our running order by her resignation. But now she's back, we feel we must return to us. And who better to talk to us on this topic than the chef and impresario Ken Hom, who knows his way around a tofu recipe.
I love tofu because I grew up with it. One of my favorite is to have it stuffed. And what I mean by that is a bit of minced pork with ginger, onions, spring onions, etc., a little bit of soy sauce. And then you steam the tofu that's stuffed, and then right before you serve it, you pan fry it. So you have the crispiness, and this is actually quite wonderful. And I grew up with tofu because it was inexpensive, and it was, of course, highly nutritious. And in my family, we didn't eat very much meat, so it was perfect for us.
Ken, look, I'll be honest here, I don't want to get in the culture war around tofu or anything like that. However, it is the blandest food I've ever eaten, I think, isn't it? I mean, I'm just not spicing it enough.
Exactly. For instance, if you eat it Sichuan style, oh my God, your tongue will be on fire. It's full of Sichuan peppercorn, and you can't believe it's tofu. The whole thing, Evan, think of it as like custard, but it's custard that you can match with other savory flavors. The problem is, by itself, it's very bland. But think of cottage cheese. How bland is that, right? Or even mozzarella. I mean, come on, mozzarella doesn't have much taste by itself, but you have to mix it with tomatoes, basil, salt and pepper, olive oil, and that's what brings it alive. And that's the same thing with tofu.
Obviously, huge in East Asian cuisine, but among the British population, do you find there's a tofu eating type?
Well, probably a vegan, absolutely vegan types. And I think from my generation, probably former hippies. I grew up with it.
But Suella Braverman referred to the tofu-eating wokarati there.
No, I think it's like putting down fish and chips. I mean, it's not a nice thing to do, to bring into a cultural war. We mustn't bring tofu into that sort of thing. If you match it right, it can be quite addictive.
Ken on there defending tofu. I have to say I do prefer mozzarella. It was an insult to mozzarella to compare it to tofu, but both have their place.
On BBC Radio 4.
When I share a problem with my wife, she offers practical solutions.
A new series of sketches and stand-up.
I just want you to feel my pain.
What do you know about pain? Rob Newman on air.
So I wrote out a series of cue cards, and so now whenever I come home after suffering some humiliation...
It is so unfair that you, with your sensitive soul of a poet, should be exposed to such indignities.
The new 6:30 comedy for Wednesday nights.
And that was all I needed to hear.
On Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
Well, we heard about the mild weather earlier in the programme. Let's get a forecast now from Louise. Louise.
Hi there, Evan. Staying mild over the next few days. Incredibly mild, really. In some areas, a good 5, 6, 7 degrees above the average for the time of year. But it's going to be very autumnal. Low pressure bringing some rain, some strong winds at times. So it's going to be quite an eclectic mix of weather, I suspect, over the next few days. Overnight tonight, we'll start to see some rain gathering in the southwest, the winds strengthening, and that's going to bring some outbreaks of rain up through Cornwall, Devon, into Wales and towards the South Midlands by dawn. Ahead of it, we'll see quite a lot of low clouds, some mist and fog, some drizzle on the coast, perhaps some clearing skies across central and eastern Scotland. So the best of sunshine first thing on Thursday morning across central and eastern Scotland. Generally, we'll see outbreaks of rain drifting their way steadily north, some heavier bursts into northwest England, southwest Scotland and Northern Ireland as we go through the day. It will brighten up behind that rain, staying cloudy and drizzly on exposed south coast, but mild for all, 15 to 17 Celsius in Scotland and Northern Ireland. For England and Wales, 17 to 21 Celsius, possibly somewhere we'll see 22 degrees, that's 72 Fahrenheit. Enjoy.
22, Louise, thanks for that. Now, I have to say, we heard a bit about this earlier, but 16 years on, the wood pigeon debate continues. Graham White emails us to say it's "My toe bleeds Betty," repeated 3 times, followed by "Oh." And John Carr writes further to the comments about the call of the wood pigeon: "Those in our garden spend their time insulting each other with a call that goes, 'You stupid pigeon.'" That's PM. Studio director was Sam Durham, our editor Alicia Cairo.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Tom Sanders. Good evening. At his first Prime Minister's questions since entering number 10, Rishi Sunak has strongly defended his decision to appoint Suella Braverman as his Home Secretary, just days after she quit because of a security breach. In noisy exchanges in the Commons, he dismissed opposition calls for an early election and revealed he was reversing Liz Truss's decision to lift the ban on fracking in England. The government's plans for repairing the UK's finances are to be pushed back until next month. MPs have heard evidence of wretched conditions at a migrant centre in Kent and of long delays in the system, with officials processing just 4% of asylum claims by people who crossed the Channel last year. President Putin has overseen what's been billed as routine exercises involving Russia's nuclear forces. Iranian troops have opened fire on protesters, marking the death 40 years ago of a young woman in custody. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, has faced criticism for suggesting that LGBT football fans heading to the World Cup in Qatar should be respectful of the host nation. Rishi Sunak has marked his first full day as Prime Minister by indicating he will scrap or review a number of commitments made by his predecessor, Liz Truss, and defending his decision to reappoint Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. Labour has accused Mr Sunak of agreeing a grubby deal with Ms Braverman, returning her to the Home Office less than a week after she was forced to resign for breaching security rules. But the Prime Minister insisted she had accepted her mistake. Speaking at his first Prime Minister's questions since taking office, Mr Sunak also reversed Liz Truss's decision to lift the ban on fracking in England and did not commit to her spending plans on pensions and defence. Our political correspondent Ben Wright was listening.
As Rishi Sunak rose to his feet, Tory MPs whooped, cheered and slapped their seats, while the Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle tried to restrain their merriment.
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker,
Can I just say, don't damage the furniture. Cheering by all means, but don't damage, come on.
After dismal months for the government, Conservative backbenchers believe they have a fresh chance. Facing his third Conservative Prime Minister since becoming Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer welcomed Mr Sunak into the job, congratulating him on becoming the first British Asian to enter number 10. But Sir Keir then tried to skewer the idea of a fresh start. He raised the reappointment of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, just 6 days after she quit the job following a security breach. The Prime Minister defended his decision to put Miss Braverman back into the same role.
the Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake. And that's why I was delighted to welcome back into a united cabinet that brings experience and stability to the heart of government.
The Home Secretary is on the right of the Conservative Party and backed Mr Sunak's leadership bid. Labour has demanded a Cabinet Office investigation into Miss Braverman's use of a private email account to send sensitive information to another MP. Sir Keir Starmer accused the Prime Minister of prioritising party politics.
We can all see what's happened here. He's so weak, he's done a grubby deal, trading national security because he was scared to lose another leadership election. There's a new Tory at the top, but as always with them, party first, country second.
The Labour leader also asked whether officials had raised concerns about Miss Braverman's appointment, a question Mr Sunak chose to sidestep. But the Prime Minister has moved quickly to neutralise other lines of Labour attack and signal a sharp break from his predecessor. Asked if he would reverse Liz Truss's decision to allow shale gas fracking in England, he said he stood by the Conservative Party's 2019 manifesto that banned it. Later, Mr Sunak's official spokesman confirmed the fracking moratorium was back in place. Mr Sunak has cited the election-winning manifesto to justify his mandate and swat away opposition demands for a general election. But with the Chancellor working on a new budget to repair the public finances, there are question marks over other commitments. Liz Truss had said the pension's triple lock, which ensures the state pension rises in line with the higher rate of either inflation, prices or 2.5%, would remain in place. Today, in contrast, Mr Sunak's press secretary was less categorical and said it was a matter for the budget. And this is what Mr Sunak said when asked whether benefits would rise in line with inflation.
My record on this is clear. Through the difficult times that we faced in this country through COVID, I always acted in a way to protect the most vulnerable. That's because it is the right thing to do, and those are the values of our compassionate party. And I can absolutely reassure him and give him that commitment that we will continue to act like that in the weeks ahead.
Rishi Sunak has already ripped up much of his predecessor's plans. Today he surfed the outbreak of unity in the Tory party, but there are tough and contentious decisions to come.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has said the government will delay the announcement of its medium-term fiscal plan and instead deliver an autumn statement next month. Mr Hunt said he wanted his decisions to be based on the most accurate economic forecasts from the Office for Budget Responsibility. The announcement, previously scheduled for next Monday, had been intended to quell the market turbulence caused by last month's mini-budget. Our economics correspondent Andy Verity reports.
Jeremy Hunt's reversal of most of the mini-budget's tax cuts has already had a strong calming effect on the financial markets, as did Boris Johnson's exit from the leadership race. The new Chancellor has now announced that the fiscal plan will be upgraded to an autumn statement, with full independent costings and forecasts, and delayed until the 17th of November. The interest rates investors expect to compensate for the risks of lending to the UK government stayed lower following today's announcement, which will in itself take some pressure off the public finances. The economist Mohammed Al-Erian says question marks still remain about Britain's economy.
From a quantitative perspective, we are back to where we were on September 22nd. You see this in terms of differentials relative to other countries. Qualitatively, there is still a question mark as to the sustainability of policies.
Since Jeremy Hunt reversed most of Kwasi Kwarteng's tax cuts, the so-called black hole in the public finances has shrunk to £35 billion, about half its potential size before Hunt's changes, and interest rates are no longer expected to have to rise as quickly. Addressing that black hole does not require immediate austerity, which could worsen the impending recession. Instead, it's the tax rises or spending cuts required in future for the government's debt to be falling as a percentage of the economy by 2027. So far, the Sunak government's refused to rule out another suspension of the so-called triple lock commitment. Raising it in line with earnings rather than prices could save around £4 billion a year. Nor has it ruled out trimming Liz Truss's plan to boost defence spending by £25 billion a year.
Environmental campaigners have welcomed Mr Sunak's announcement that he's reinstating the moratorium on fracking in England, which was ditched by Liz Truss. The controversial technique involves firing a high-pressure mixture of fluid and sand into rocks deep underground to release natural gas. As our climate and environment correspondent Jonah Fisher explains, the Prime Minister's decision represents a change of tack.
In the 2019 election, the Conservative Party manifesto confirmed a ban on fracking, unless scientific advice on its safety changed. 3 months ago, Rishi Sunak had a different view. This was him during hustings for the Conservative Party leadership.
Rishi Sunak, fracking, yes or no?
Yes, if local communities support it.
A week ago, Mr Sunak restated his backing for fracking as he voted in Parliament in favour of Liz Truss's decision to lift the moratorium. Today, well, there was another shift. At the dispatch box, Mr Sunak, now Prime Minister, announced he'd changed his position and Liz Truss's policy, while responding to a question from the Green Party MP, Caroline Lucas.
If he is a man of his word, will he start by reversing the green light she gave to fracking, since it's categorically not been shown to be safe, and instead maintain the moratorium that was pledged in that very manifesto that he has promised to uphold?
Well, I've already said I stand by the manifesto on that.
By committing himself to the 2019 manifesto, Mr Sunak effectively banned fracking once again. Remarkably, despite all the political hot air fracking generates, it's still not clear how much gas is under the UK and whether it makes economic sense to try to extract it.
The Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration has told MPs that thousands of migrants are living in wretched conditions at an overcrowded processing centre in Kent. David Neal said people being held at Manston Airport faced a really dangerous situation, as the Home Office had failed to ensure the site was safe and could be run properly. The Home Affairs Committee also heard that just 4% of asylum claims made by migrants who crossed the Channel last year have been processed. Our Home Editor Mark Easton reports.
For a Brexiteer such as Suella Braverman, who promised to take control of Britain's borders, every migrant arrival on the Kent coast is a humiliation. But the situation is also a huge practical challenge for the Home Secretary. On arrival, migrants are taken to what was supposed to be a short-term holding centre at Manston in Kent. Designed for 1,000 people staying less than 24 hours when it opened in February, there were almost 3 times that number living at the centre on Monday, when the independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration paid a visit. Today, David Neal told MPs he'd written to the Home Secretary after being left speechless by the dangerous conditions at the centre.
I spoke to an Afghan family who had been in a marquee for 32 days. Kit mats on the floor with blankets for 32 days. And a Syrian family who'd been there for 2 weeks as well, the mother of who was terribly distressed because she didn't know where they were going. So this is a pretty wretched conditions.
Home Office officials say the nationalities of those crossing the Channel is changing, with Albanians now the #1 category. In 2020, just 50 Albanians arrived in small boats. Last year it was 800. This year already it is 12,000. Of that number, 10,000 are single men, representing more than 1% of Albania's adult male population. The man in charge of the Home Office's response to migrants in small boats is Dan Omani.
The rise has been exponential,
And we think that is in the main due to the fact that Albanian criminal gangs have gained a foothold in the north of France, and they've begun facilitating very large numbers of migrants.
The new Home Secretary has said she wants to prosecute many more migrants for illegally arriving in Kent under a new offence contained in the Nationality and Borders Act. She's also enthusiastic about sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, suggesting she would expand the scheme and would also seek to prevent the European Court of Human Rights from stopping flights. With the Rwanda scheme stalled in the courts and 100,000 people stuck in the asylum system, many migrants are currently housed in hotels. Today, the Home Office revealed the cost of hotel accommodation is now £5.6 million a day for asylum seekers. With Home Office systems gridlocked, there are no quick fixes for what was described today as a really dangerous situation.
President Putin has overseen exercises involving Russia's nuclear forces. State television showed footage of Mr. Putin watching the drills from a control room. There have been growing fears of an escalation of the war in Ukraine after Russia claimed Kyiv was preparing to detonate a radioactive bomb, an accusation which Ukraine and its Western allies have strongly rejected. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg reports from Moscow.
It was a routine exercise, but at a time of heightened tension between Russia and the West. Addressing President Putin, Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu declared, "Under your watch, we will practice a large-scale nuclear attack in response to a nuclear attack by the enemy." On land, sea, and in the air, Russia's strategic nuclear forces readied and then launched cruise and ballistic missiles. The drills were a success, claimed the Kremlin. Since Russia invaded Ukraine back in February, there's been growing concern in the West about the scale of nuclear rhetoric from senior Russian officials, including Vladimir Putin. He's been dropping unsubtle hints that Moscow, in certain circumstances, would be prepared to use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the NATO alliance is currently conducting its own annual nuclear deterrent exercise, dubbed Steadfast Noon, in northwestern. President Putin accused America of using Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia, and he accused Kyiv of wanting to obtain nuclear weapons. The Kremlin leader repeated Moscow's recent allegation that Ukraine is preparing to explode a radioactive dirty bomb as a provocation. There is no evidence to support this claim. Western officials have dismissed it as a transparently false allegation.
Iranian security forces have opened fire on protesters in several cities who are marking 40 days since the death of Mahsa Amini, who died in police custody accused of wearing her hijab incorrectly. Her death sparked weeks of demonstrations. One of today's protests was at her grave in her hometown of Sagez. Fana Rahimpour reports.
The Iranian authorities did everything possible to stop people from attending the memorial ceremony for Mahsa Amini. They blocked the roads in Sagez and issued false statements on behalf of her family to discourage people from coming to the grave. But they failed. In videos published on social media, thousands of people can be seen walking along a road heading towards the young woman's grave. Protesters gathered and chanted, "This year is the year of blood, the year when Khamenei will be toppled." They mean Iran's supreme leader. Security forces shot at the demonstrators and used tear gas. There were similar scenes in dozens of cities across Iran. 40 days of violent crackdown, nearly 250 people, including 29 children killed, and thousands of arrests. Still, calls for regime change can be heard from every corner of Iran.
You're listening to the 6 o'clock news on BBC Radio 4. The main news so far, Rishi Sunak has appeared in the Commons chamber for the first time since assembling his cabinet, facing a grilling from MPs about his reappointment of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary and announcing a fresh change to the government's fracking policy. President Putin has overseen annual exercises by Russia's strategic nuclear forces at a time of heightened tensions with the West. Still to come.
It looks delicious because it's so rich and black.
putting the leaf in the little brewing pot. Oh, there you go. Time's up.
The perfect cuppa, brewed from tea grown in Orkney, in what's thought to be the world's most northerly plantation. The Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has been criticised for suggesting that LGBT football fans who attend the World Cup in Qatar should show some flexibility. Speaking to LBC, he said people should be respectful of the host nation. Labour called the statement shockingly tone-deaf. The government later said supporters do not have to compromise who they are to visit Qatar. Our LGBT and identity correspondent Lauren Moss reports.
The decision to stage the World Cup in Qatar, a country which has no legal protections for LGBT people and where homosexuality is illegal, has long been criticised by campaign groups. Yesterday, authorities in Qatar stopped a protest being staged by the campaigner Peter Tatchell against the treatment of LGBT people, but insist he wasn't arrested. Speaking to LBC this morning, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, seemed to suggest supporters should compromise when visiting the Gulf state.
One of the things I would say to the football fans is please do be respectful of the host nation. They are trying to ensure that people can be themselves and enjoy the football. And I think with a little bit of flex and compromise at both ends, it can be a safe, secure and exciting World Cup.
Mr Cleverly's comments have been criticised, with Gary Lineker asking on Twitter if the message to fans was, whatever you do, don't do anything gay. Labour's Shadow Sports Secretary Lucy Powell called the remarks shockingly tone-deaf.
This is exactly what I think many in the LGBTQ+ community feared about this World Cup, and I think we want to see our British Foreign Secretary taking a lead in these issues and not asking the British gay community to hide who they are in order to go and enjoy the World Cup.
Last month, the chief executive of the Football Association, Mark Bullingham, said he'd been assured that fans wouldn't be arrested for holding hands or kissing in public. But supporters groups, such as Three Lions Pride, say they've received no guarantees.
The Dutch government says it's investigating claims that China has set up 2 illegal police stations in the Netherlands to harass Chinese dissidents. A Spanish organisation says China has set up 54 such police centres around the world, including 2 in London and 1 in Glasgow. Beijing has denied the reports. Our correspondent Anna Holligan has been to one of the Dutch locations in Rotterdam.
Ivy vines are weaving up the wall, net curtains billowing behind open windows, and just in front of me there's a Chinese-style ceramic vase on the windowsill. This 4-storey house just north of Rotterdam city centre was listed in an investigation by a Spanish organisation as being used by Beijing's secret police involved in carrying out persuasion operations designed to coerce those suspected of criticising the Chinese regime to return home. One dissident given asylum in the Netherlands told journalists he'd been pursued by Chinese police and subjected to a campaign of harassment and intimidation orchestrated, he believes, by the Chinese state. The Chinese Foreign Ministry described the findings as untrue and said the alleged overseas police stations were what it called service stations for Chinese citizens abroad, adding that China fully respected other countries' judicial sovereignty. The Dutch Foreign Ministry told me the failure to declare any such policing operations through the diplomatic channels was illegal. The real concern is that such activities subvert national law enforcement and put dissidents, refugees and other groups at risk by circumventing the protections offered in the countries where these alleged Chinese outposts are operating.
Figures released by the United Nations show concentrations of the 3 main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide, rose to record levels in the atmosphere last year. The annual rise in methane concentrations for 2021 was the biggest since measurements began. Speaking to the BBC, the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, said the world was approaching a point of no return when it came to stopping catastrophic climate change, but he said there was still hope.
Net zero in 2050 is essential, but we will not get to net zero if we don't start reducing emissions now. We are at risk to reach some tipping points, and after those tipping points are reached, there are changes that are completely irreversible. And so we have very few years. I would say we have 2 or 3 years to change course.
Directors of Public Health in England are urging the government not to reduce their budgets when the Chancellor makes his tax and spending announcement next month. They say local authorities, which pay for initiatives such as helping people to stop smoking, are on a financial cliff edge, and any cuts to public health budgets would hit poorest communities the hardest. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes has been to Sheffield to see how one local public health initiative works.
An appointment at 3:15.
At a sexual health clinic in Sheffield, women are being offered advice on contraception. It's a key public health service that has helped drastically reduce rates of teenage pregnancies in the city. This kind of work is funded by the council through a grant from central government. Local authorities in England received £3.4 billion this year to provide public health services. But rising inflation is now eating into that funding. Analysis by the independent charity The Health Foundation reveals that once inflation is taken into account, the public health grant has been cut by nearly a quarter since 2015. Dr. Emma Park runs Sheffield's sexual health service. She's worried about what any cut in funding might mean.
It would be a disaster, to be honest, particularly as we're facing a cost of living crisis. Being in a position where you can't control how many pregnancies you have has huge knock-ons, not only for the woman, perhaps her partner, maybe other children within the family. It would all compound the existing health inequalities and poverty that people are already facing.
And the local director of public health, Greg Fell, warns that in cities like Sheffield, already battling the negative impact of poverty on health, cuts have consequences.
We all have seen flatlining life expectancy, flatlining healthy life expectancy. That has very big impact on kind of health and social care demand, but also has impact on the economy. There's no slack, there's no room for further efficiencies.
The Department of Health and Social Care says public health grants for next year will be announced in due course. But the worry is that double-digit inflation, along with possible spending cuts, will mean vital services will be lost and the health of the poorest communities will suffer.
Heathrow Airport has warned that it could reimpose a cap on passenger numbers at busy times at Christmas. A daily limit of 100,000 people was put in place over the summer due to staff shortages. It will be lifted at the end of this month. The online furniture retailer Made.com says it will not take any new orders from customers after it failed to find a buyer. The firm said the decision will remain under review. Made.com was valued at £775 million when it floated on the London Stock Exchange last year, but it now says insolvency is on the cards. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports.
Made.com rode the boom in online shopping during the pandemic as people were forced to stay at home. The business, which employed 700 staff at the end of last year, enjoyed a dramatic rise in sales. But it's now on the brink, running out of money and time. The company was hit by global supply chain problems, disrupting its just-in-time delivery model. It was forced to hold more stock, tying up lots of cash. But then consumers started to rein back on big-ticket items, forcing it into discounting. After a series of profit warnings, Made.com hoisted the for sale sign last month. But this process has failed, and so far it's also been unable to raise any emergency funding. It's quite a reversal of fortunes for a business that only listed on the London Stock Exchange 16 months ago, valued at £750 million. Its share price is less than a penny today.
In the city, the 100 share index ended the day up 43 points at 7,056. On Wall Street a short time ago, the Dow Jones was up 135 points at 31,972. On the currency markets, the pound is up against the dollar, trading at $1.16.2. Against the euro, sterling is at €1.15.3. That makes a euro worth 86.7 pence. The first British cyclist to win a stage of the Tour de France, Brian Robinson, has died at the age of 91. He triumphed in stage 7 of the 1958 edition and then won a second stage by a full 20 minutes the following year. After his retirement, Brian Robinson played a pivotal role in the Grand Départ of the Tour de France, coming to his home county of Yorkshire in 2018. Cricket. England's men have suffered a shock defeat to Ireland at the T20 World Cup in Australia. England were slow in chasing Ireland's total of 158, and when rain stopped play in the 15th over, they were 5 runs short of their reduced target. They now need to beat Australia, New Zealand and Sri Lanka in their remaining matches to guarantee progression in the tournament. Our cricket correspondent Jonathan Agnew was watching in Melbourne.
You won't find any excuses from the England camp. They were beaten fair and square. Ireland made the better of the conditions, while England's bowling was wayward and erratic. Wokes' first 3 overs were hammered for 41, and England struggled to control the flow, while Balbirnie and Tucker added 82 in 9 overs, taking the score to 102 for 1, before the lucky run out of Tucker sparked a total collapse of 9 for 54. Butler edged the second ball of England's innings, Hales skied a catch for 7, and when Stokes was cleaned up by hand for 6, England were 29 for 3. Milan made 35 but was never fluent, Brooke made 18, and while England will rue the rain robbing the enterprising Moeen of the couple of overs that might have made the difference, Ireland's captain Andrew Balbirnie was left to celebrate a famous victory.
I've been very lucky that I've been involved in some amazing moments for Irish cricket over the years. You know, the game isn't big in Ireland. Hopefully we can get the recognition back home and we can break into that sort of top 3 or 4 sports that are played in the country, because, you know, we don't have the player pool, we don't have the infrastructure, but we know that when we have 11 guys on the pitch that they're going to give their heart into every performance.
England have now slipped to 3rd in their group, and much now rides on their much anticipated clash with Australia on Friday.
For centuries, we Brits have relied on imports of tea from warmer climes such as China and India for our much-loved cuppa, but stand aside jasmine and Darjeeling. Now a woman from Orkney has successfully brewed tea leaves grown at home from a plantation which could be the most northerly in the world. Our correspondent Adam Harkus has been to the island of Chapinsay to meet her.
They are thriving despite the wind, the rain and the fact that tea plants just do not normally like this kind of condition.
Lynn Collinson has been tending her tea plantation on the Orkney island of Chapinsay for 6 years.
We are standing here beside a miracle. It's tea growing out of doors in Orkney, in the probably the furthest north that tea has ever grown outside.
This first crop yielded 7 kilos of picked leaves, which produced just 1.5 kilos of finished tea. Mrs. Collinson calls it Norse Noir.
I've only got 65 packs of 15 gram portions of tea in packs, so I haven't got loads to play with. Oh, it looks delicious because it's so rich and black. Putting the leaf in a little.
Did to 95 degrees is added and left